Hello, my name is Oliver Jeffers. Welcome to the Ulster Museum as one of the events of the Our Place Festival, which is part of the Our Place in Space exhibition that is happening around Northern Ireland, around the United Kingdom these next few months. And the entire idea of this festival is looking at perspective, that time and distance inevitably give perspective. And how is it that we view ourselves if looked at from a different perspective, if looked at from a distance? When we see ourselves from Earth, on Earth, from as far away as even the moon, does it change how we think about ourselves? And as part of this, I've invited some people to come to Northern Ireland to speak about cosmology, to speak about art, to speak about politics, and to speak about perspective. And in my travels, I've had the great fortune of meeting some very interesting people. And one of those people is Daniel Lismore, who is about one of the most uniquely individual human beings I've ever met. In Daniel's TED Talk, he mentioned the Oscar Wilde quote that be yourself as everybody else is taken. Although in some ways I think he is a personification of what Cher said, which is all of us have imagination. Some of us just have more imagination than the others. And so in conversation with Daniel, speaking about the perspective of the narrative of your life, the way in which you perceive yourself outwardly and inwardly, will be Ruth, who chairs one of the greatest festivals in Northern Ireland, the Outburst Festival. And Ruth has been a tireless campaigner for all sorts of civic, human, climate rights, as well as being fiercely individual herself and challenging the way in which we tell ourselves the stories of our own lives. So please welcome to the stage, Daniel Lismore.
Hello.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Oliver, for that really, really gorgeous introduction. And thank you all for coming out this evening. As Oliver said, my name is Ruth McCarthy. I'm the Artistic Director with Outburst Arts and Outburst Queer Arts Festival. And I'm absolutely delighted. And delighted is maybe one wrong word, and I'll explain that to you in a second, but I'm delighted to be here to start a conversation with Daniel that we'll continue with you, because we're most interested in hearing questions that you'd like to ask and get a bit of a conversation going. So you're very welcome, Daniel.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Oliver, and thanks for sharing your Cher quote. I love that.
Yes, he was so impressed. Oliver said, "Did he just quote Cher?" I was like, "Yes, he did." So the reason that I said, that I was delighted to be here with you, I'm not actually giddy. I feel so calm. Because the minute Daniel walked in and I met him earlier on, I felt this instant kind of calm come over me. And it's partly because you smell like a temple. And you really do. I really wish, you get this close and smell. Daniel will tell you probably a bit that he makes his own perfume. But also you have a wonderful, calm presence that I think immediately makes people feel relaxed, which seems almost like the antithesis of what people might feel like when they see you. So you've been in Belfast for a couple of days now as part of the Our Place in Space Festival. And you dress like this most of the time, every day. So what has the reaction or the kind of breadth of reactions been while you've been around Belfast the last few days?
I think it's been very positive. I think I've had two maybe ignorant situations. And I said earlier, someone stopped outside the car and it was a young lad, and he just stood there and he did this weird nose thing. It was like he didn't like the smell of me. And I said, maybe he's gay and he's struggling. And usually for me, they're the people that do attack me. And I realise, and I'm sorry it's TMI, but they're the ones that ask to go home with me at the end of the night. The guys that call me all sorts of names. So, it's fascinating. I've had the warmest welcome here, and people have been so lovely. And I remember last time I was here for the EMA Awards, the MTV Awards. and they told me it was the first time the city had really come together, and everyone was out, and it was amazing. And we hear some bad things in the UK, in England, and sorry, I don't know where I am half the time. So I got on a plane, so I was like, okay, I'm going somewhere. But I haven't experienced any of that. Today we did actually drive around, and I saw, the flags on different sides, and I don't know, like I'm so, it's fascinating, and it's real, and I travel the world and I see things like this all the time. But I always think peace is the best way, but we need to see each other, hear each other, and love each other no matter what, because we're in a bit of danger right now. Climate change is a real thing. I've sat in the room with amazing scientists over the past 15 years, like world leaders, all kinds of people. And, we're looking at each other going, you're this, you're that. Yeah, we are, but get over it, right? First of all, get over it. Second of all, there's a lot coming, and if you're worried about, we went to Uranus today, which was wonderful, and we stood, and I looked over the city, and I thought, wow, and I was thinking, what did I think of Belfast? Like, what have I heard about it? And I was like, what a special place. All of this trouble's happened, but it's a small pocket of, and I was like, imagine what's just happening down there. And I guess it's like, I spoke to Chris, the astronaut. I had dinner with an astronaut, and I asked him about what he thought of humanity, and he more or less said he had that effect, the astronaut looking down on Earth, thinking we're all so tiny, and I just thought, well, what a beautiful place. And I imagine if everyone went up there, which you should, because it's quite amazing, and looked down.
Space to divestment.
Well, either either.
Yeah. Either or,
now. I thought, what a beautiful place. Imagine if everyone goes up there together and looks down and go, okay, that's where we live. We all live there. How are we going to live together? You all live here.
And we love pageantry. The thing that's interesting to me for someone like yourself walking around Belfast is we're a city of parades, and we're a city of carnivals and circus and pomp and everything. And I think it's because it's about what you become familiar with, and what's familiar to your eye, and how I work in the arts, and I work in the arts because I love how the arts can help people see the familiar in a different way. And I imagine when you're walking down the street and we're in this familiar world that we see every day, the same streets people see every day, and they see you, suddenly the shape around you also makes the world very different. And what an amazing, amazing gift to give to people.
Thank you. It's very surreal sometimes. I've seen cars crash and people drive off the road, and all sorts of things, weird things happen around me. But it's interesting how I've learned. I just closed a show at the City of Culture, and I'm from a small village called Forlongley outside Coventry, and I had a terrible time there. And I moved away to London and became a model and worked, 20 years ago. And I went back there, and I've had this show for about 6 years, and I've learnt so much more about humanity than I have. I guess I learnt my prejudices, and one of the weirdest prejudices was towards straight white men, because because I have reason, because I'm always fearing. I'm like, uh-oh, here we go, what's going to happen? And I found that it just, what happens is people just change. And I was just in Arkansas, and I was in Mississippi, and people come up to me and they say, they tell me the biggest secrets. I'm like, wow, okay. And they open up, and I think that people think that they're meant to act and play these roles in life, but this is really not who we are. We're so conditioned by the places we're from, and I think when I'm very lucky, I get to travel the world and see different things and go to different places and understand. I'm really lucky. I don't know.
And it is that thing again of like what we are familiar with, we cease to see, and the fact that people come up to you and tell you secrets, I can imagine, because like I said at the beginning, there's something very almost like church-like, like Buddha-like, or like an icon that you might see in a temple in Nepal, And I think people want that. I think we're also desperate for connection and for places to tell our secrets, and like that sense of otherness. That, and I use that word in a very positive way, that sense of otherness often gives us permission, doesn't it, to explore that otherness in ourselves. And I think, again, that's a wonderful gift to give to people.
Yeah, or they run a million miles. But I meet the most extraordinary people, and I've traveled the world, and I know here and the rest of the world, there's a whole thing against LGBTQIA plus people who are very real people. I'm sure there's many of you in the room, and they're debating our existences. Well, I'm real. If I'm not real, then what am I? I'm not an illusion. I'm actually sitting here, and so are you. And it's just, I don't know what's going on, but it's just craziness. Like, I think it's mental illness. Like, there's a plague of really unhappy people, and they're just taking it out just because, I don't know, it's cruelty.
Yeah, and I think, we'll come to talking about environmental issues, which you're a big campaigner, and especially around sustainable fashion, which I think is part of, this kind of almost like a cognitive dissonance that's happening when something is so big that's happening that you have to deal with. And sometimes we take it down to something petty because we can't deal with the bigger picture. But I'm making an assumption in the room that everyone knows Daniel and Daniel's work, and I want to jump straight in because there's so many fascinating things I want to ask Daniel. But I suppose just to take it back, Daniel, just kind of start from the beginning. As you said, you were born in a small town, and it's a very familiar story, I think, probably for a lot of queer people or anyone who's grown up in a small town, a bit different for some reason. Of that feeling of creating a world for yourself that you can be in, that makes you feel either safe or seen or able to express yourself in some way. Was that part of for you what made you interested in fashion and looking in an incredible way, almost making yourself more visible with what was already a difference?
I think it's the opposite in a way. For me, it's like wearing lots of armor, and I'm like a big ostrich in all these feathers, and I put my head under the floor, and no one can see me, but obviously everyone's looking at me, and you can see ostriches from a mile away. So I don't know. I guess that since I was young, I just had people be horrible, like just for whatever I was, wherever I was. And I thought, well, I'm just going to have to go and do what I want to do and live how I want to live. And I guess it's defiant, but also it's how I want to be. And I think also when it comes to fashion, I think since the Victorian era, everything's remained the same, more or less. Like tailoring came in, and it was a wonderful thing back then when tailoring came in, and it made everybody look. There was a classism, and it made everybody look the same, so no one could really tell unless they had a certain bottom button undone, and people would know who's who. But I think today it's become like the opposite. So everyone dresses and looks similar, and it's like to fit in, and actually to fit in for me is like hell. It's like the worst idea.
Why? Why
unless,
for you?
Because I want to live my life. Like, I want to live my life. I want everybody else to live their lives the way they do. Unfortunately, I've been to places where it's illegal to be yourself. And you were talking about spaces, and it's really hard sometimes. In the Western world, especially, we're lucky to be able to be us. But there's places where you're completely illegal. Your actual existence is illegal, and I think it's that people create communities, and I don't know. I always say to people, they say, "How can we live our lives when we can't be ourselves?" And I'm like, well, get to the point where you're happy with being you, and then the rest. Unfortunately, the problem of everybody else. It's not your problem, however it is. Like, you know.
Yeah, you were saying this earlier, and I really loved that thing. You know, we were just asking, you know, how you deal with people who maybe react, usually in shock or you know, nervously. And you were just, you know, very calmly said, and it was really beautiful. It was like, well, it's not about me. And it's true. I mean, the reactions that other people have about us are never about us.
They're
They're
none
always
of our
about
business.
something in themselves.
They should go and just live their lives and let us be. And I wish that was the way it was. But thinking a lot right now. I've seen lots today, and
yeah. And so you grew up in a small, smallish town, and you moved to London quite young, and were part of the club scene there, and that was obviously a very important part of your formation. I mean, when I look at your look now, I mean, I'm of an age where I think of the New Romantics, and you know, your look really harks back to a lot of that style. And I think of the Blitz Club and all of those clubs that were around in the 80s that, you know, a lot of people, you know, Visage and Boy George and all that, you know, even Susie Sue and all were involved with. What was the scene like for you when you went to London, and like, what did it kind of fire up in you or give you?
So it was the aftermath of Lee Bowery and all of that situation, and I was very lucky. I remember going there, and I saw Kate Moss, Pete Burns, and Bjork on the dance floor, and I was like, oh my gosh, and they all became my friends. And I always thought of Steve Strange, who you know, the song "Fade to Grey," the New Romantics. He started that. He became like my weird uncle, and Boy George became my weird auntie. And they kind of adopted me, and Steve really pushed me, and so did George, actually. And George saved my life once, like I was in a really terrible space. But they kind of mentored me, and even up to today, I mean, I was so heartbroken when Steve died. I know it was a nightmare, like he could be so naughty and do all these. But I saw the aftermath of that, and I realized that club culture was dying, and I started my own clubs. And I started a club with Jodie Harsh, who's a drag queen and now an amazing DJ. And we would have Alexander McQueen, Paris Hilton, Amy Winehouse, like literally Gwendolyn Christie, who was in Game of Thrones, like Paloma Faith. They were all there, like we were dancing, partying together, and it was my job to go out and find people all over London and bring them to the club, and it
people who were interesting to look at,
or like bored billionaires, or you know, Michael Barrymore at the time, or Gail Paul, like all these people, like, or the Hare Krishnas, and I would bring them all to the club, and it was so amazing. And I think anyone that was actually there will say they were the best times, like they had, even sometimes better than the 80s. So.
Yeah, and I mean, scenes like that really generate, like, they're kind of regenerative, aren't they? I mean, the more people who come to the clubs, they bring new ideas, new fashions, they kind of create whole communities. And of course, now what's happening is, especially with queer clubs and gay clubs, that's kind of falling by the wayside, and we're losing a lot of our venues. And I'm wondering, are you seeing the impact of that on a kind of next generation? Or like, I don't really know that type of a scene exists as much anymore.
I mean, it's definitely still in New York. You've still got Amanda Lepore and Suzanne Barch and Lady Fag, and they're doing all their amazing parties, and they're continuing that. It's changed a bit. But London, there's this kind of Parma Ham is amazing, and Parma Ham does all these great parties, but there's nothing like they used to be. But that's every generation, so they're creating their own thing. And so, but I did speak to some people, and they said they preferred to stay at home and dress up. So things are changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the one of the many wonderful things that you do is that you're involved with a lot of activism around climate crisis. I won't call it climate change anymore. I'm really trying to call it crisis, because it is. And I was reading some really interesting statistics around fashion, and I've read one that shocked me, that by the year 2030, there'll be a 63% increase in demand for clothes. just by the population growth. And when you think of the fact that of the amount of resources that are used in fashion, that's really. You can see that it's going to have a huge impact. At the moment, about 30% of our clothes are secondhand, which is great. I mean, it's quite a good statistic. So you've been working with people like Vivienne Westwood, and obviously the very nature of fashion is new now, fabulous, the next thing. How do you practice, I suppose, that first, and how do you see the rest of us who wear everyday clothes practice that change in mindset that we need now?
I reuse things. I try not to buy things anymore. I buy an odd thing if I'm somewhere, and I either reuse things, recycle them. I wear them a million times. I love it when jewelry falls apart because I'm like, yes, I can stick that in my tiara, But I've worked with Vivienne Westwood on all of her climate stuff. We did lots of stuff against fracking. We've done all kinds of things. And recently with Greenpeace against the marine protected area situation, the governments haven't kind of said they would protect the areas around the UK, and they haven't. But fashion, I don't know if you know, it is the second biggest polluter on the planet, and it's going to get a lot worse. Don't buy new stuff, end the trend. And I think I'm going to talk at BOF Voices about ending trends, and I'm not going to be very popular.
When you say trends, so you're talking about, like, this handbag is in this season, that kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, it should be more, this handbag is trash, don't buy it. I know it's not going to be a popular talk and an idea, but I think it's necessary, and so do they.
Are fashion designers starting to respond to that now?
Yeah, many are. Yeah. And many, some of the young ones have actually got it better than the big labels. And I think in 100 years, the big, like, LVMH group will be destroyed by this. And I think people that do buy their clothes will go, oh, wow, like, this young designer can actually make me a whole wardrobe for what I'd pay for a suit. So I don't know. I think people will start to smarten up, and maybe not. I don't know. But there's so much to talk about with that situation. It's the high street. I mean, I know Anna Wintour said to end any kind of advertising of the high street to all the Vogues. I know that. I shouldn't know that, but she's done that, and I think that's a good thing. But there's a long way to go. How do you educate the public about that? How do you educate, because it's just a nightmare. And then I'm really worried about Amazon, because they have AI now. So what will happen is all the designers will literally disappear, and Amazon will be making clothes for the markets because they have all the information, and all the creativity will go out of it. So everything will be made by AI, and that is the future, and it's happening. So it's all very problematic. So
it's about people like yourself, especially encouraging that next generation to go look at what you can do with imagination. Yeah, look at what you can do with creativity. This is how important creativity is. So I could sit and chat all evening, but I'm very aware that there's probably folks in the audience who'd love to have a chat. So I'm actually going to pop down because I've got the mic. If you don't mind me leaving you there, Daniel, I'll take my phone with me so that it doesn't go off my ma rings in the middle of it. So yes, so if people want to just kind of put up your hands, if you want to ask Daniel anything, any questions straight off? Okay, there's one there. Anything else? I generally like to start with a woman because there's actually an interesting scientific phenomenon that says that if a man asks a question first, women are less likely to do it. So are there any ladies or non-binary people? Hello, Chelsea, how are you?
Hello, Daniel.
Hi.
What advice do you give to adolescents who say, how do I find myself? What questions should I be asking? How do I think about who to even ask for help or advice beyond you? What do you say in response to, I'm sure, the kind of large universe of questions you get like that from people who are really inspired by your ability to live authentically and want to know even what their own authenticity is and how to try to discover it for themselves.
I mean, don't look at the past generations. Look at what's going on around you with how. This is what I would say. Like younger people, because of social media, I believe, although it could go the other way, people are starting to realise who they are quicker today than they used to. Because when I was growing up, we didn't have that education, so it was illegal to say the word gay in school. You know, like we had Section 28, and.
Don't worry, we're in there in the United States.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. I think there are organisations you can go to. There are certain websites sometimes that young people can go to without any trace of actually looking on. So there are places like that. It's very difficult. I see kids now so different to how they used to be. And I mentioned earlier to someone that my niece came home and she said, "Oh, my friend's trans." And I'm like, wow, like she was quite young. And I was like, how like when we were at school, we didn't know, like we didn't know how to talk about that. We could, you know, basically because we were, I mean, it's trying to be, it's very hard to say who you are at that age. I would say if you are an adult, please let your child be who they think they are, because if they tell you something at some age, the likelihood is that later on they are that person. And, you know, I knew who I was when I was really young. I just had the world tell me very differently, and I was terrified. I was literally terrified of coming out. I thought it was the worst. I thought my whole world was going to end. And for any kid to be in that position, I mean, would you rather? This is like, it's a question sometimes, because the youngest statistic of suicide, and I'm sorry, it's like a trigger warning, is LGBT kids, like in the world. So that's the biggest rate of suicide in the world, is young LGBT people. And would you rather like love your child or a dead child? I mean, some people are disgusting and might say the latter, but that's a nightmare. But I don't know. I think to listen, like, I mean, and to try and be you and try and question everything. And if your parents, you know, say this is wrong, you're like, but be curiosity and explore. And I don't know. There's places you can go. There's charities if you're struggling with identity. And it's a really hard question, because I don't know all the answers to that, and I would like to say just be you, but it's not that easy. Did that make sense?
I'm sure you've been asked this question before. I'm thinking about the discussion you've had with industry and designers and that, but we all know there are vintage shops and second-hand shops, but what is the conversation you have that helps people understand how you can sustainably clothe millions of people?
I mean,
if you're looking at that big change, it has to be more than what we have at the minute. What is it you talk about to the industry and to fashion design when you talk about the practicalities of sustainably clothing millions of people?
The conglomerate. I did an H&M campaign, and I now know how awful, you know, they were. But back when I did it, I didn't know some of the terrible things that they'd done. But their campaign was about recycling, and I thought, well, this is really weird. The high street is saying recycle and use like vintage things, and I thought it was really weird. But the whole industry needs to change. But what will happen is the big companies say it's so hard for us to change because we're so big, and actually there's no excuse for that. And it's a very strange situation. I think if companies are not changing, I think everyone should just boycott them, and then they'll have to change. But there are really amazing labels that actually think about everything, and they're doing great things, and they're really talented. And I don't know. It's a very strange industry right now. People really don't want to change, but many are. But yeah.
And money does talk. I mean, you're right. I think a lot of the thing is, let's talk with our pockets. I mean, sometimes you can feel powerless, I think, in the world with very big issues. And, you know, people power at the end of the day. Just use what you have. You know, the money in your pocket, the choices you make every day. So there's person here who wants to ask?
I'm just now starting to wear more of what I like and starting to find myself, but I'm still sort of embarrassed to wear what I like to wear. Do you have ways to feel more confident in yourself and what you're wearing and being more outwards and expressive?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I've struggled a lot with kind of acceptance. I always thought I was really ugly. You know, I was always told that when I was younger, and it kind of stays in your mind. And for me, and I used to, someone once told me, it was actually Boy George, he said, "Get over yourself." And I was like, what a cruel thing to say. But he meant get over all of the things that you're thinking about yourself, because that's not how the world might see you. You're okay as you are. And you look wonderful, like, be wonderful. And I believe we live once, and I think sometimes I'm like, am I really going to go there looking like this? And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to walk in, see what happens. And you don't know what's going to happen. If you don't dress up that day, you don't know what could have happened, or you don't know, things could be very different. Image and dressing differently is very powerful, and it has been throughout history. And I think the other thing I would say to anybody is to be kind to yourself, because you deserve it, and you deserve to be you, and you deserve to live in this world and be exactly how you like to be. And if anyone doesn't like it, then they're not worth knowing. That's their problem. It's not your problem. And that's what I would like to say to you. And I know it's hard to actually do these things, but sometimes be kind to yourself by being you. And that's all I can say, really. But I hope that helped.
Yeah. It's a really great question, and because it just takes an awful lot of guts to get there. And I would say, to add to that, find your tribe, find other people. Do you know, as a queer person growing up, that's what I did. Big old dyke, or a small old dyke, smaller then. But find your people. It'll make you a lot stronger and a lot braver. You're not on your own. There are many other people out there who will want to look and try things as well. I'm going to go up to Claire Bailey, who is the head of the Green Party. Hello, Claire Bailey. You wanted to ask something?
Thanks very much for that anonymity there, Ruth. And thank you very much for being here. You look absolutely stunning and mesmerising. And the conversation's been so big, I think, already. There's so many ideas in there. I suppose my question is really leading into, we are in a climate crisis, and most people feel very powerless or lost, knowing how to deal with that or what's required from them. And I'm trying to link that. I mean, the change that's needed is deep, it's fast, it's rapid. And I'm trying to think of what comes of community from there. And it goes into the conversation you were saying, Ruth, as well, about, maybe find your people, your communities. How do you make clubs? How do you create scenes? And you were in our city today, obviously having a good look around, and hopefully then you notice our city centre isn't looking too good, that what we're doing with our public space and buildings isn't great. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas to share about things that you've seen in your travels, of who has done what in local spaces to try and create new communities and a sense of newness, I suppose, in the new world.
Sustainability type stuff, Claire, yeah? Yeah.
Or within, localised, just what's happening in the world to help people cope with what we're living through?
So I was very lucky to go to Ukraine in September before all the situation happened there. And I was blown away by it, literally blown away. And they were using all these old, Soviet buildings for all these wonderful things. And I think you have to make use of what you have here. And I know it's very hard to do things and make them accepted, but the more what Oliver is doing, I think here is wonderful. And if there are more public art things, you need to ask I don't know if they're going to give you at the DUP, but you need to keep applying for public art situations. And the more of those things that happen, take over old buildings. In London, it's actually quite good when some of the buildings after COVID were derelict. artists just went to these big housing, people that own everything and said, could we please use your building for this? We want to make something happen in the community. And I was just, so I think, London is a very good place. Ukraine was amazing at just using the old facilities and putting something new in them. And I was so blown away by the arts and culture there. And the designers, and there was this amazing designer kind of making these artworks for the wall, and I walked in, and then all these girls came out and they put the artworks on them as dresses, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So it's, embrace artists in the community and hold them up and hold each other up. And if if people say it's wrong, then there'll be other people that will love it. So I think you just have to keep doing it. And culture is a really, I'm from Coventry, right? So Coventry was blown up, completely flattened, ugly buildings all over the place. It was, the concrete city. And the City of Culture came, and it's a complete different place now because the community started to embrace things, and they all thought it was a bit weird at first, I think. And I think the more they saw, the more accepting they became. And I think arts and culture are the most important things in society. And if you know great artists, kind of display the work in your bar or pub or whatever you have, and try and ask institutions to help you out. And that's what I would say to you, get communities to kind of raise arts and make things happen. I don't know I'm sorry if that wasn't a great answer.
Yeah, no, it is a fantastic answer, I think, Daniel, because sometimes I think we've been kind of led into a sort of submission around the idea that we can't do things, and it's almost like we're waiting for permission sometimes. And I think the greatest gift you can give to children, I know it's a kind of the antithesis of what most parents need to do, it's like, you don't have permission to do that, is to say you don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to wait for permission to dress up. You don't need to wait for permission to get together with 2 or 3 people and form a little club. Most of the best things that ever happened, and certainly things I've been involved with and things that my friends have been involved with, started by a few people just being bored and going, well, what do we do? And I think the key is to not wait for permission, and that the world opens up to you when you make a decision to do something. It really does. So there's a question in here. Take a few more.
Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. I have watched your TED Talks innumerable times, but I never thought I'd get to sit in the same room as you. I feel very privileged. What I was thinking of was something you alluded to earlier was, I'm a gay guy, I'm a father, my son's straight, which is okay as long as he doesn't tell my friends. And his mom's gay, so we came from good genes, but he's straight and we can't help that. And he's straight, like he plays pool, rugby, stuff, and he's adorable as well. But I think in recent times, we came out and it was the lesbian and gay world, and bisexuals were always ignored. So now we have our LGBTQIA+, and I've started to feel quite uneasy in my gayness. So I look at straight men and I just think I have nothing, absolutely nothing in common with them, with the vast majority of them, apart from my genitalia. When I talk to them, I just think, do they actually hear me? Do they have no idea of my world? And so maybe there is a sort of gender issue there for me that I'm a little bit more comfortable with. But if you sit, and I'm sure you do, in the company where there are you comfortable in the company of straight men?
Yes. I am very comfortable because I'm not scared. I don't fear them as much as I used to. Like I said earlier, I had a prejudice and I learnt. But I sometimes sit in the room with some of the most powerful white straight men in the world. And I always do try and find something that I could, even watching Star Trek, something. And then they go, oh, you're a person. Oh, you know this too. And I explained going to Arkansas recently, and sitting with all these people, and they were terrified to meet me. They were literally, I was told they were terrified, and some of them had never been so quiet in their lives, and I made some friends, you know. There was a situation where I went into a restaurant, and it was the first place to allow black people in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and everyone was like, "What the hell has just walked in?" And I could see that there was a group of people, they didn't like my existence, and I was like, uh-oh. I didn't know I was meeting the politicians of the town and the head of the Chamber of Commerce and all these people, and they came to join me for dinner. And I was like, oh, who are these people there? You know, and they were very nice to me. And then I stood up, and my friend actually owned a blues bar with Morgan Freeman there, and he passed away last year. And at the end of the dinner, I stood up and I walked intentionally towards the people that didn't like my existence. And they were like, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I came to see the town that my friend Bill lived in. And they were like, oh, Bill Luckett? And I was like, yeah. He was like, he was our friend too. And I said, wasn't he amazing? I said, I miss him very much. And all of a sudden, I made some friends. And it takes conversation sometimes. Sometimes it won't. But I meet people all over the world, and they fear me, but I don't fear them. And I think that's the key, to know that they are like that. Unfortunately, sometimes I don't know. I like then talking to those people, because I need to see if I'm going to fight something. I can't go in blind or like not listening, or I need to know what I'm fighting. And I think if I'm not fighting them, I'm making friends with them. And I believe that there is a kind of part to humanity. We all have our own prejudices, and sometimes it's good to try and get past them to get to the next level. I know that those war veterans will maybe see someone else one day, and they won't judge them as much as they judge me, hopefully. And it's hard. It's very hard. Sometimes there's situations where I'm out of here. I am not staying around. I had there's other situations where I had a funny encounter with President Trump, and I'm sorry, like I couldn't hold my anger, and I literally bent over the balcony and I gave him the middle finger while taking photos of him. So I got a triptych of Trump's anger. But so I think it's fear, our fear, and it's not worth having sometimes. I think we just need to, I don't know what we need to do, but every situation's different, and I try not to be scared. So it's probably not great of me to have done that. My mum told me off, but...
Okay, I'm going to take 3 or 4 more quick questions, if that's okay. So if you keep your questions quite tight. And Jamie, here you go, love.
There are currently people in my school who are questioning their sexuality. So, like, what advice would you give to them if seeing that they're questioning themselves?
They're questioning you or themselves? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
I feel very confident. I feel very confident with my sexuality and very open about it. Yeah. But a lot of people, they're quite nervous about it because maybe they've grown up in different households, or maybe they're just afraid of other people judging them. So, like, what advice would you give to them about that?
To feel safe, and if you're not in a safe space, it's sometimes very hard to be you. So try and find somewhere that you feel safe to talk, someone that you can trust. Not all, like, that's what I would say to them, because not everyone is trustworthy and not everyone is, is open. So there must be somewhere that one of them can go and talk to, and it's just so horrible that people have to go through that and be scared of who they are, and I would love to say, go and be yourself, but I know it's not that easy. So it's to find a space where you can be you with someone, and that's a good start, I would say. And then you can, once you feel a bit more comfortable, or if the situation never changes, like when you're a bit older, I would say to them, like, maybe move away or, you know, get out. And I had to, like, and so many other people do. So it's like, when you're old enough, leave if you can, and go somewhere that you do feel safe.
Yeah. And if I'm correct, Jamie, you're part of a gay-straight alliance in your school. So I don't know everyone in the room, but I do know some people. It's like I never leave my house, but I still know people. You're part of a gay-straight alliance, which I think is the most amazing phenomenon that's emerged over the last number of years. I've been a queer activist for 30 years, and I never thought I'd see the day where schools would have gay kids and straight kids and questioning kids coming together with support from teachers and, more importantly, school boards, because we all know that those are the difficult ones to get past. So I'd also say, if there are any teachers or educators in the room, start a gay-straight alliance. Give your kids that space to have allies from a very early age, because it will make, I wish I had it when I was 12, put it that way. So any more questions? Let's take 2 or 3. There's loads of hands going up now, so I know that I'm going to pretend not to know you. Just take the look off me. Here we go.
No idea who she is, promise. Just want to say really quickly, absolutely leave here, but please come back, because things aren't going to change here unless we start coming back and living as who we are here. But it's important to go and explore elsewhere. This may feel a bit of a superficial question, and I hope I frame this right, but I found, as a woman working in quite a professional career and feeling the pressure to wear makeup and heels and dresses, and lockdown was a real relief for me. And I got really used to wearing leggings, and I got really used to just not having to worry about putting my armour on, as it were. I'm wondering, how was lockdown for you? Did you dress up every day? Did you lose that, or was it the same every day? I just would love to know what your experience was of that.
I was lucky because I'd just done the TED Talk, so people were trying to book me to speak, and I'm sorry I'm not doing a great job today and when I was here yesterday. But for me, I'm part of the TED community, and they had a little conference with some of their speakers, including Bill Gates and some other people, and I was like, wow, this is going to be serious. So I went home and I told my mum, there's going to be a lockdown. We need to start being careful right now. My mum thought I was crazy. So I packed my stuff up from London, went home, and I wouldn't let anyone leave the house. And I'm really grateful and glad that I had that. And I told everyone I knew as well. So I was like, everyone thought I was mad. And I was like, what on earth am I going to do? And I did dress up every day, apart from I did wear jogging bottoms and slippers. But I kind of practiced my makeup. I worked, I had all these I said I like broken jewelry, and I had all these boxes of broken jewelry and all this old fabric, and I ordered some adhesives and glues and things and needles and thread, and I started going over all the times that my jewelry broke. So I was really going back through my life and making new works, and I had to get really creative, and I was dressing like the evil queen, acting like Snow White, building birds' nests, and really trying to appreciate nature. And but it was very hard, for everyone. But also, what I did do is Clubhouse was a new thing. So I formed a Clubhouse group, and I managed to create the biggest queer community in that space. And for the first time ever, the whole queer community from Afghanistan, from Ghana, from Nigeria, from Mexico, everywhere, started speaking to each other, and we'd all hold each other up and talk about the issues and situations. And I ended up forming this amazing group. It was called the LGBTQIA+ Allies Club. And we kind of tried to help people from all over, just either with talking stupid things or really serious things. And lots of great activists came from that group. So that's what I really put all my effort and work into. And it was also fascinating to hear the other queer communities around the world, because we're literally in every single town, village, country, continent, including Antarctica, on the planet. So we're everywhere. It doesn't matter if people think we don't exist, we're literally everywhere. And for me, that's what I put my mind to, trying to help other people if I could. And then when things unlocked, we try to do things in real life, you know. We helped LGBT rights Ghana out, and we, you know, I got some powerful people to kind of protest against the situation that was happening there. So that's what I turned to. Yeah, and
Great.
yeah.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions. I know over there, I'll pass the mic. Oh. Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
I've read a little bit about you. I've heard you on YouTube, that kind of thing. And tonight as well, you've said that how you dress it's like putting on armor. And I think tonight you alluded to hiding behind that as well. So I suppose I'm very curious to know about the real Daniel. And you also have said in the past that sometimes you don't go out as a living work of art, but you go out dressed like an ordinary person. So when you do that, what are the differences in terms of how you feel when you're dressed spectacularly like you are tonight, or when you're just in jeans and a t-shirt? What are the gains, what are the losses, or whatever with each situation?
Okay, so for me, my life is very real. This is actually how I am. So it is a thing. And I think maybe what your idea of a jeans and t-shirt for me is drag. So I experimented recently. I lost weight and I had my face lasered and I looked 10 years younger, and I thought, okay, well, this is like a good, like, for me, that was like complete drag. It's the opposite. So I am always myself. It's never whether I look like this or if my hair's past my waist, you know, or I could tie it back and look. However, for me, everything I do is real. So, you know, people might think this is another thing. When you do wear a lot, I guess a lot more things than most people, people guess it's a performance, or you know, if people, I don't start dancing when people tell me to, you know, like if you clap your hands, I'm definitely not going to dance. Like I will watch you clap your hands and go, wow, that's fascinating. Like, so for me, it's the opposite of, I don't know, the world thinks I'm performing, but the world is performing for me in I'm the audience in a way, like in my life. And so people do react differently. I'm a lot more popular on Grindr in drag, but that's as far as it goes, really. Like people still treat me the same, and you know, if I wear a tracksuit, I look like Vicky Pollard. So it's that's quite problematic. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. If my hair's down, people don't know what to do. People stare at me anyway, so I may as well give them a good reason. You know, that's how I think of it, because this is me. Like I am being very genuine all the time, and this just helps me to be, you know, to get out there, and also. Dressing like this puts me in these crazy situations. Like I'm sitting here today, and I walked a mountain this morning, and and it's just really interesting what happens. Yeah, did that answer the question?
I suppose it sort of does, but I was wondering if there was a difference in. Do you feel you've lost something, or? Was there a difference in how you feel as Daniel, as yourself? Do you feel a wee bit more exposed if you're not dressed like this?
Not really. No, literally not really. It's, you know, my mind is still the same at all points, like, you know, wherever I am, yeah. And I don't mind, like, it's yeah.
Great. Okay, so we're going to have one last quick question. I think Oliver, you might want to have a question there at the end as well. So just one quick question.
Okay, I hope this is a good one to end on. Hi, Daniel. Just
thinking about the theme of the festival and the conversation that was happening yesterday at Chelsea's talk about taking up space, and yesterday it was very much about women taking up space, and today it's about queer people taking up space, and then with Claire Bailey talking about climate crisis. And I guess I'm sort of interested in not just the space that we're taking up now, but the spaces that we're leaving behind. And I guess my question for you, who's not just a jack of all trades but a master of a ton, do you ever think about your legacy and what that might look like or feel like for who we leave behind and the world that we leave behind? And do you have an idea of what legacy you would like to leave?
I honestly have no idea. I just hope I don't slip up and do something stupid. But you know, and that's the world that we live in. Like, I hope I don't do anything that in one day it will look terrible. Like that's my biggest fear. I don't ever want that to happen. But apart from that, I have no idea. Yeah.
Great questions, by the way, folks. Thank you so much for engaging so much. Oliver, you wanted to ask something at the end.
Well, are you optimistic about the future of humanity?
Just ask an easy question at the end, why don't you, Oliver? I'll answer very quickly first to just hand it over to Daniel for the last word. Yeah, it's almost like a kind of a masochism sometimes to be that optimistic, but absolutely. I work a lot with young queer people, young trans people, and I learn from them every day, and they blow me away in their passion and their power. And I just go, you know, even when I'm feeling weary, there's other people that aren't. And I think the lesson there is just, you know, we're all, it's a symbiotic world. We all depend on each other. And when some of us are tired, the rest will buoy us up. And we've just got to, you know, I know it sounds a bit twee, but like really keep caring about each other enough so that, you know, there's waves of us. We don't always have to be strong all the time. And what I always say, especially to young queer people, is there is huge strength in your vulnerability, because vulnerability is what we need most in the world in many ways right now. To be vulnerable enough to say I'm unhappy, to be vulnerable enough to say the world is in a certain place and oh God, I don't know what to do about it. Because as soon as we start that conversation with I don't know how, then it follows, well, how do we? You know, so if that answers the question some way about optimism, yeah, I'm optimistic, but I also think we need to get working. It's not going to happen on its own. Optimism on its own and reading a self-help book on its own is not going to do the job. It's hard work. And we all need to kind of get our hands dirty now. So, yeah, optimism with work behind it, definitely.
I'm very optimistic. There's people like Chelsea and there's people like Malala and Greta and all these amazing activists actually making so much sense to most people. I would hope. Just by looking at the younger generations, I may have lost hope for the older generations. Not everybody, but I lost complete hope, nearly. But looking at younger kids, and they're all educated, like there's the internet now, and they're growing up and they're actually seeing the reality of things. I know there's a lot of fake news and other things, and there's still the situations that the other people have gone through over, you know, the decades and, I mean, thousands of years. But I look at them and I'm like, well, they're kicking ass right now, and they make sense, and I think they're going to do a good job, a better job than what we've all done. And so I do have hope. And I think if we lose hope, I mean, what's the point? I think we've got a long way to go. We have to work really hard. And I would say to the queer community, I just wanted to say this. I've been here for a few days, and I've heard like so many horrible things in the queer community of how people are treating each other. I think you need to get over yourselves, start loving each other and holding each other up, because you're going to be left behind if you don't start fighting now. And it literally, you're the ones that are going to suffer for your meanness that you. I mean, maybe not anybody in here, but it's been quite. I'm like, really? Like, I think you need to hold each other up and be kind to each other, because no one else is going to be kind to you unless you're kind to yourselves, and it's the way forward. And the governments are a nightmare, and I think what's just happened in America is so disgusting, and it could happen here. I mean, that situation's already here, but with queer rights and everything else, it's going to go backwards, and you need to start fighting and stop fighting each other.
Yeah, and often I think that comes from a kind of a fear as well. And I think when there's been a lot of conflict and when you don't know what to do, but you're absolutely right. It is. It's like, it's simple, and it is that be kind. Just stop, take a moment, and be kind. And being kind is also work. And that's what we all need to do. So look, Daniel, I think we could all probably sit and chat all evening, because there's so much about all of the different things you do, whether it's creative work, whether it's activist work, or whether it is just that experience of seeing the world in a different way. And I absolutely just adore what you say about, like, no, actually the world isn't observing you, or you're observing the world. I think it's that switch in vision that often is just so wonderful and so creative. So I just want to say a massive, massive thank you so much for being here tonight. And where are you heading off to after this? Or are you heading home for a bit? Sure.
I'm going to see Diana Ross at Longleat.
Well, do you know, that's a great way to follow being here. Sure, why not? Ain't no mountain high enough. So thank you all for engaging so beautifully. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Oliver, and for curating the festival, and for bringing your friend Daniel to Belfast. We really appreciate that. To Sarah, Aoife, and Jude up in the box, because I said I'd say hello, because he's just so lovely and he was so pleasant earlier on. And the tech people never get enough praise. So thanks, Jude. The festival continues. You can find out more at ourplaceinspace.earth. I'm so envious of that. Like, it's not a .com. Just like, where'd you get that? So .org. I want queer or something like that. There has to be a thing. So check out the website for more fantastic events. I think most of them are free, which is just an amazing thing. And you can find out more about Outburst Arts at outburstarts.com, and the festival is on in November. We'll be having lots more conversations like this, so please come along and use that space for those conversations. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. And go to Uranus if you can.
So safe home, everybody, and thank you again.